Lucas Bennett believed he had a complete understanding of Grace Moore, until that fateful day at the grocery store when he spotted her with two little ones affectionately calling her Mom. They possessed her gaze, her laughter, and a history she had never shared with him. In that instant, all his convictions about their subtle, evolving bond crumbled, giving way to something much more intricate and undeniably authentic. Lucas Bennett had grown accustomed to entering a room and feeling the atmosphere change around him. He drew attention, his name resonated, his wealth was evident, and his presence commanded reactions of either admiration or strategic consideration. That was the realm he had navigated since his youth, and the realm he had come to command. However, Grace Moore defied that pattern entirely. She regarded him without a hint of flattery or suspicion. She hardly glanced in his direction. He first noticed her during a brainstorming session, positioned at the far end of an elongated table, her laptop aglow, her notes meticulously organized, her voice steady and articulate. She was understated. She had no intention of drawing attention to herself. Yet, when she uttered her words, all ears turned to her, including his. Within her, there resided a subtle power, one that required no spotlight. Lucas arrived at the small marketing agency unexpectedly, driven by a mix of boredom and intrigue. He was eager to witness the operation firsthand after his company had invested in one of their digital products. He anticipated his visit would last no longer than 20 minutes. He lingered for over an hour. It wasn't the figures or the way it was laid out, but rather her presence that made the difference. Following the meeting, he stayed a bit longer than usual, engaging in conversation with the creative director and casually tossing in a few questions about the team. Grace's name was mentioned. She was neither a newcomer nor among the boisterous crowd. A soft hum, as someone remarked. Sturdy. Dependable. The following day he returned, offering a nebulous reason about wanting to review another set of campaign ideas. She felt a wave of surprise wash over her, yet she chose not to inquire further. She extended an invitation for coffee. He politely refused. Yet he remained, participating in a brainstorming session, observing her craft. She had a remarkable ability to manage pressure, skillfully maneuvering through disagreements with grace and humility. It intrigued him more than he cared to acknowledge. With a deliberate and measured approach, he began to weave himself into her daily life. A shared stroll to the elevator, a casual remark about her choice of colors, a coffee delivered to her desk under the pretense of sampling a new cafe. She never engaged in flirtation. She never sought to dazzle. And in some inexplicable way, that was precisely what captivated him. In a realm where many sought validation, Grace remained unbothered by the need for recognition. She just existed. He discovered that he was searching for her, even when his visits to the agency had different purposes. He began to inquire about her interests, steering the conversation away from work to explore her favorite music, books, and cities. Initially, she exercised caution, responding with politeness while maintaining a soft boundary. He sensed her hesitation regarding his genuine interest. Perhaps she believed it was just a fleeting moment. Perhaps she had encountered enough men of his kind to understand that they were not the ones who lingered. Yet he did. With careful intention, he remained. He refrained from asking her out. He remained completely still. He consistently appeared, absorbing more than he expressed, providing gifts rather than demands. As time passed, she became more gentle. She began to chuckle at his witty remarks. She responded to his inquiries with her own questions. They started gathering beyond the confines of their workplace, taking strolls, enjoying intimate dinners, and engaging in conversations that lingered into the night. He discovered he was revealing to her thoughts he seldom expressed. Concerning the chill of corporate spaces, the burden of legacy riches, the solitude that resided in the unspoken gaps of achievement. And she listened, not with sympathy or intrigue, but with a deep sense of comprehension. He refrained from inquiring about her family. It was a topic she never mentioned. He mistakenly believed that there was none. He observed her lifestyle, self-sufficient, poised, discreet, and envisioned that her existence was as uncomplicated as it seemed. There is no ring. There are no photographs on her desk. There are no references to young ones. He believed she was akin to him, a person who had mastered the art of crafting a life steeped in solitude and guarding it with unwavering determination. Unbeknownst to him, Lucas found himself captivated by a woman whose reality was intricately layered, far beyond the facade she presented. And that revelation was poised to transform everything. On a serene Thursday afternoon, the atmosphere transformed unexpectedly. Lucas had just wrapped up a last-minute meeting with a potential investor and chose to swing by a small grocery store close to his apartment, a spot he seldom frequented yet had walked by countless times. He craved coffee and a brief return to the ordinary. The boardroom had exhausted him, and there was an unusual solace in being in a place where no one recognized him. He wandered through the aisles at a leisurely pace, devoid of his typical urgency, savoring the simplicity of the narrow shelves and the soft glow of the fluorescent lights. He rounded a corner by the checkout line and halted abruptly. Grace was present. She turned her back to him, her hair gathered in a casual bun, dressed in jeans and a cozy sweater, a stark contrast to the refined image he was accustomed to at the office. She appeared entirely relaxed, bending down to engage with two children, twins, a boy and a girl, who stood nearby. They must have been no older than 4. A young boy grasped a box of cereal, while a girl held tightly onto a small stuffed animal. With their reddish curls and fair skin, there was an undeniable allure in their eyes that sent a twist through Lucas's stomach. "Mama," the girl said, pulling softly on Grace's sleeve. "Can we get the purple yogurt as well?" Lucas sensed his breath hitch. It was more than merely the word. It was the effortless way the girl spoke, how seamlessly she blended into Grace's life. He remained motionless, partially concealed behind a stack of canned soup, observing a side of Grace he had never encountered before, gentle, nurturing, utterly devoted to her children. He had witnessed her concentration and calmness, her intellect and strength, but never in this manner. Never in the role of a mother to someone. Initially, he felt a sense of bewilderment, then a feeling akin to disbelief, not due to her having children, but rather because she had never confided in him. Not a single time. He reminisced about each conversation they shared, every dinner, every stroll, and every profound silence that lingered between them. Had she been untruthful? Had she merely left out something so significant? And if she had, what other thoughts remained unspoken? He retreated quietly before she could catch sight of him. The thought of approaching her in that grocery store, flanked by her 2 small children, seemed intrusive. He abandoned his cart and stepped into the refreshing afternoon air, hardly registering the gentle breeze or the warm sunlight. His thoughts echoed with a chaotic intensity. He found himself grappling with a tumultuous blend of disappointment, hurt, and confusion churning within him. In the solitude of his apartment, he perched on the edge of his bed, phone clutched in his hand, yet he refrained from making the call. He felt compelled to seek an explanation. He had no desire to engage in conversation with her whatsoever. He felt a sense of absurdity for the depth of his emotions, for the certainty he had in understanding her true self. He attempted to convince himself that it was of no consequence. She was fully entitled to maintain certain aspects of her life in secrecy. She was not indebted to him in any way. Yet, beneath the surface, he was aware of the reality. He had already ventured too far. That night, he lay awake. He reflected on the boy's gaze towards her, the girl who rested against her leg, and the way Grace had smiled. So open and unguarded, a stark contrast to how she had ever been around him. And it pained me not due to what she possessed, but due to what she had kept to herself. He began to construct something with her, gradually and thoughtfully, convinced it was reciprocal, convinced she had faith in him. And now he found himself questioning the reality of it all. By the following morning, Lucas had vanished from her life. No messages available. No correspondence. There are no calls. He disappeared, not from malice, but because he was overwhelmed by the tempest of feelings within him. And Grace, oblivious to his observations, found herself pondering why the man who had gradually woven himself into the fabric of her daily existence had abruptly decided to retreat into the shadows of anonymity once more. In the initial days following Lucas's disappearance, Grace reassured herself that he was merely preoccupied. His schedule was a whirlwind, characterized by late meetings and unexpected flights to various cities. She was hesitant to make any assumptions, particularly as their relationship had been developing slowly and thoughtfully. She remained calm. She patiently lingered, striving to keep her thoughts from spiraling out of control. Yet, as the days elongated into a week and then into 10 endless, quiet mornings, a sense of unraveling took root within her. The text messages she dispatched lingered in the realm of the unread. All calls went directly to voicemail. There was no explanation, no warning, just a sudden and complete void that left her in a state of bewilderment. She made an effort to maintain her poise, particularly in the presence of the twins. They had grown accustomed to her unwavering presence. It was a realm she had crafted for them, one that was steady, serene, and secure. They were completely unaware of what had shifted. They didn't inquire about Lucas since they had never encountered him. She had maintained a strict divide in her life, driven by a desire for safety and a lingering sense of apprehension. Worry that he would flee the instant he confronted the complete reality. And now it appeared he had, unbeknownst to her, he had caught sight of her in the store, that he had observed the children. The moment she had feared, the revelation she had wished to introduce gently when the time was appropriate, had surged upon them unexpectedly. She sensed that something was amiss, and the silence began to resonate more profoundly than any words he might have uttered. In the quiet of the night, with the children tucked away in their dreams, she found herself at the kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold beside her. The house would be still, almost unnaturally so, and her mind would drift back to every exchange they had shared. She pondered whether she had entirely misunderstood him. She reflected on how he had truly heard her, unlike anyone else, and how he had shared insights about matters that most men in his role would keep to themselves. She recalled the moments when she began to envision him meeting her children, how she imagined him in the kitchen with them, sharing laughter, perhaps even making a home there. Yet she had kept it from him. Perhaps that was where she went wrong. In her attempt to safeguard something delicate, perhaps she inadvertently forfeited the opportunity to share it entirely. Lucas, in the meantime, found himself caught in his own interpretation of the stillness. He kept his distance not from resentment, but from pain. His thoughts spiraled in a relentless cycle, revisiting the sight of Grace beaming at her children, the jarring realization that she had concealed something so significant from him, and the burden of uncertainty that lingered in the air. He had always perceived himself as a person difficult to astonish, difficult to sway. Yet from the very start, Grace had stirred something within him, and that was what rendered the truth so painfully sharp. Due to his moment of vulnerability, she chose not to reveal her complete truth to him. Yet, beneath the letdown, there lingered another feeling: remorse. As he pondered the matter further, it dawned on him that he had never inquired. He had taken for granted. He had crafted an image of her shaped by his desires, liberated, unbound, and simple. He had not allowed space in that vision for anything authentic, chaotic, or grounded in the kind of history that transforms everything. With the illusion shattered, he found himself at a loss, unsure of his next move. He experienced a deep sense of betrayal, indeed. Yet beyond that, he experienced a deep sense of shame regarding his own anticipations. Yet he remained inactive, remained silent. As Grace lingered in anticipation of a word, a gesture, or anything that could illuminate the void left by his absence, Lucas held his silence. Not due to a lack of concern, but rather because his concern ran deep, leaving him at a loss for how to move ahead without tumbling into all that he had dedicated his life to evading: vulnerability, uncertainty, the profound and unpredictable nature of genuine connection. Thus, two individuals who had nearly grasped something extraordinary gently separated, each bearing fragments of a truth too burdensome to shoulder alone. The rain fell relentlessly the day Lucas arrived at her doorstep, a persistent downpour that drenched the pavements and hushed the surroundings. Grace had not anticipated a visitor. Having just completed the task of settling the twins for their nap, The gentle sound of their soft breathing lingered faintly through the baby monitor resting on the kitchen counter. She stood barefoot, clad in a worn sweatshirt, cradling a mug of lukewarm coffee when the knock echoed through the quiet space. Initially, she considered the possibility that it could be a neighbor, perhaps someone bringing a package. Yet, as she swung the door open and beheld him there, drenched, weary, and mute, a stillness enveloped her entirely. Lucas remained silent for a moment. His gaze sought hers, not with criticism but with a profound intensity, a blend of hurt and uncertainty. He appeared changed, not in the most apparent manners. Still impeccably attired, although his shirt adhered to his skin and his hair was damp from the rain. Yet, there was an element in his expression, a certain rawness, humility, and a vulnerability she had never encountered in him prior. She silently moved aside, granting him entry. The dwelling exuded a cozy warmth, enveloped in a serene stillness. Baskets held toys, while a selection of children's books was arranged neatly on the coffee table. It may not have been expansive, but it exuded warmth and affection. Lucas surveyed his surroundings with a fresh perspective, as though he were experiencing it all anew, which, in a sense, he truly was. He had never witnessed this aspect of her existence, and now he found himself at the center of it all. Grace neither provided him with a towel nor inquired if he desired tea. She remained still, arms folded, biding her time, anticipating his words, anticipating the reason behind his unexpected arrival after such an extended period of silence. At last he spoke. "I saw you." His voice was deep, heavy with unspoken thoughts. In the supermarket, alongside them, she remained steadfast. She was genuine. She gave a slight nod. "I had a feeling." He scrutinized her once more, with greater intensity this time. "You never mentioned it to me. I understand. What is the reason behind this?" She exhaled slowly, her voice unwavering despite the way her fingers gripped her arms tightly. "Due to my lack of knowledge on the matter. I never wanted you to gaze at me like this, not now, not ever, as if you're not aware of my identity." Lucas averted his gaze for an instant, his fingers gliding through his damp hair. He strode purposefully across the living room, then came to a halt. I was at a loss for how to handle it. I found myself at a loss, grappling with the reality that the woman I was developing feelings for had an entire existence that remained a mystery to me. She advanced, her voice soft yet resolute. I wasn't concealing them out of shame. I was safeguarding them. Perhaps I was also shielding myself in some way. Every man I've encountered viewed them as a burden, as an inconvenience. I wished to avoid seeing that glimmer in your gaze. Thus, I lingered in anticipation. I bided my time, anticipating the perfect opportunity. Yet, there truly never seems to be one, does there? He took his time before responding. He gazed at her, a blend of remorse and an emerging tenderness in his eyes. "You ought to have informed me, Grace." "I understand," she repeated. "You ought to have remained." That brought him to a standstill. They stood there, two individuals who had danced around the truth for far too long, ultimately laid bare by nothing but sincerity. It lacked any sense of drama. There were no elevated tones, no weeping. Only anguish exchanged in balanced portions. "I hope you don't believe I was dishonest with you," she said gently. "I simply couldn't rely on you to stay put. I did indeed run. I understand." They locked eyes, and in that quiet moment, an unspoken change occurred. Not yet, not forgiveness. However, comprehension. Lucas moved ahead, cautiously, as if he feared shattering something delicate that existed between them. "I'm present at this moment," he stated. "I'm not quite sure what that signifies at this point. I'm uncertain about my place in this moment. However, it was important for me that you understood that. I felt it was important to express this directly to you, rather than relying on a message or risking any potential misunderstanding." Grace gazed at him intently, perceiving not the man who had vanished, but the man who had returned. She gave a brief nod and moved aside once more. This time, as he ventured deeper into her home, she made no move to halt him. Lucas made his way back the following day. He never inquired about the possibility of joining. He materialized at her doorstep, wearing a tentative look and holding a bag of pastries he had acquired from the nearby bakery. Grace opened the door with a sense of surprise, though not quite shock. There was something about his presence, still new within her home, that began to fit into place like a long-lost piece that had gone unnoticed until this moment. She paused for a moment, then retreated once more, granting him entry. The twins lounged in the living room, scattered across the rug with crayons and construction paper, completely immersed in their imaginative realm. As their eyes lifted to meet his gaze, they halted, intrigued yet unafraid. Though they were unfamiliar with him, he somehow felt like a familiar presence. Lucas refrained from initiating a conversation with them right away. He set the bag of pastries down on the kitchen counter before taking a seat at the table with Grace. She observed him carefully, uncertain of his expectations or the words she was meant to utter. Yet, he refrained from seeking explanations on this occasion. He refrained from bombarding her with inquiries or insisting on responses. Instead, he shared something straightforward. His week, a deal that almost fell through, a book he read during the flight home. It felt odd to listen to him talk so casually amidst a room adorned with children's artwork and piles of half-folded laundry. And yet, it resonated in a way that took her by surprise. He lingered for an hour. After that, he departed. The following day, he returned once more. This time, he arrived with a delightful children's book. He settled on the floor and began to read to the twins, his voice initially shaky, too rigid, too proper. Yet, as Mia let out a soft giggle and offered a gentle correction on a word, he felt a wave of ease wash over him. Grace lingered in the hallway, attuned to the sounds around her, her gaze steady, her heart wavering yet starting to warm. Lucas held back. He never requested to be part of it. He just appeared, time and time again, silently, softly, with great patience. The twins began to inquire about him. Initially, it was just a few minor inquiries, such as whether he would return or if he had the ability to sketch horses. As the clock inched toward 5, they took their places by the window, anticipation building in the air. They would hurry to the door at the sound of a knock, not out of obligation, but driven by their own desire. Lucas always arrived with something in tow, yet the essence lay beyond the offerings. It revolved around his unwavering reliability. He recalled their preferred juice. He recalled the name of Mia's beloved stuffed bunny and the precise way Leo preferred his sandwich to be sliced. He absorbed the cadence of their existence and entered it, embracing the flow without attempting to alter the pace. Grace began to perceive him in a new light, not as the individual who had turned his back, but as the one who made the conscious decision to return, not driven by remorse, but by genuine desire. She remained uncertain. She remained hesitant, yet her heart had finally opened. As the night settled in, with the children tucked away in their dreams and silence enveloping the home, she silently prepared a cup of tea for him, no questions needed. They lingered at the kitchen table, enveloped in a heavy silence that stretched on for what felt like an eternity. He refrained from taking her hand. He never inquired about what lay ahead for them. He sat there, fully present, creating a space where silence could thrive without any pressure. As he prepared to depart that evening, he turned to her and remarked, "I'm not anticipating you to place your trust in me right away. I am fully aware of my actions and inactions. Yet I find myself present at this moment, not out of obligation, simply because I desire to be, even if it requires remaining on the periphery until you're prepared to welcome me in." Grace remained silent. She accompanied him to the door, ensuring it remained open until he disappeared from view. That was the night she began to entertain the thought that perhaps he was sincere, not through language, however in attendance. As a month slipped by, Lucas had settled into a subtle presence within their lives. He always maintained a respectful distance, never presuming or intruding, yet his presence grew into something the twins eagerly anticipated and that Grace found impossible to overlook. Each visit was a progression, each story time a strand gradually intertwining him into the tapestry of their existence. The children had become accustomed to his tranquil, consistent presence, and they included him in their daily rhythm. In his absence, they inquired about his return. When he arrived, they welcomed him into their games without a second thought, as if he had always been destined to occupy that place alongside them. He continued to refer to himself as Lucas in their conversations, never attempting to impose a character. Yet an undeniable change had occurred. He was no longer viewed as a mere guest. He was perceived as a person who remained steadfast. Grace stayed vigilant, yet even she couldn't ignore the unfolding reality. Her walls, meticulously constructed over the years, now bore cracks. He had truly deserved them, not by grand displays, but by steadfastness and attentiveness. He always respected her limits and never asked for more than she was willing to offer. He only spoke of the future when she took the initiative to bring it up. He consistently arrived, time after time, with unwavering hands and a welcoming spirit, filled her with dread. Once, she had thought that love like this was a fantasy, something unattainable for someone like her. She held the role of a mother. She was intricate. Her existence brimmed with obligations, daily rituals, chaos, little garments, and the tumult of nighttime tantrums. Yet Lucas appeared unfazed by it all. He refrained from attempting to mend her life. He entered with a subtle reverence. One evening, Grace stood on the porch, lingering in the stillness long after the children had drifted off to sleep. At first, she was unaware of his approach. He lingered in the dim light, assisting Leo in crafting a cardboard rocket ship. As she spun around, she found him in the doorway, casually leaning against the frame. His gaze on her filled with a tenderness that stirred something deep within her. She remained silent. He didn't either. For several minutes, they remained there, side by side, the silence enveloping them, nearly as intimate as a caress. At last, she turned her gaze toward him, her voice barely a whisper, almost lost in the night's embrace. "I didn't think someone like you would desire something like this," she murmured. He refrained from inquiring about her meaning. He was aware. The tumult, the uncertainty, the weight of nurturing kids who didn't share his blood. The truth she had concealed for so long, driven by the fear that once he glimpsed the entirety of her being, her past, her present, and her future, he would choose to leave. Yet he chose not to. He admitted candidly that he hadn't thought he would either. "Up until you." She lifted her gaze to the heavens, fighting back the tears she wished to keep at bay. "They truly care for you, you realize, even if it's not spoken aloud just yet." "I understand," he remarked, "and I reciprocate that love." The words flowed steadily. They lacked any semblance of performance. They were unwavering and confident, much like all that he had been since the instant he came back. Grace gulped, her heart pounding fiercely in her chest. She had intended to maintain her defenses for a while longer. She vowed to shield her children from any form of uncertainty. But Lucas felt a newfound clarity. He seemed genuine. She gazed at him, genuinely gazed, and recognized not a billionaire, not the man who had once vanished, but the man who had been present every single day since. She inhaled deeply and moved nearer, her voice a whisper. "I'm uncertain about what this will turn into." "Nor do I," he remarked. "However, I am eager to discover." She nodded, and in a moment of spontaneity, she reached for his hand, unburdened by thought or concern for what might follow. He remained unyielding. He gently intertwined his fingers with hers, warm and steady, as they stood beneath the soft glow of the porch light, no longer unfamiliar with each other's truths. Within the confines of the home, the evening was serene. The half-finished cardboard rocket rested on the living room floor, a testament to creativity in progress. The twins slumbered peacefully, and out on the porch, a different kind of stillness had finally taken hold. This is not a conclusion, yet it is just the start. The ensuing weeks passed with a gentle cadence that neither Grace nor Lucas was willing to disrupt. There were no grand proclamations, no abrupt alterations in status or habit, yet an undeniable transformation had occurred in their connection. They had stepped over an unseen boundary that rendered everything more vivid, more delicate, and more exquisite all at once. Lucas started to frequent the house more often, not only during the evenings but also during those in-between moments. He helped with weekend lunches, folded tiny clothes without needing a prompt, repaired the wobbly chair at the dining table, and focused intently on learning to braid Mia's hair, which sent the twins into fits of giggles. Grace observed these instances with a sense of calm, noting how he seamlessly integrated into their lives without causing any disruption. It felt as if he had been destined to be there all along. The twins began to call him Luca, their gentle voices slightly mispronouncing the name. It brought a smile to his face each time. He chose not to correct them. One morning, Leo, without any invitation and still in a dreamy haze, settled into Lucas's lap and laid his head against his chest as Grace prepared breakfast. Lucas paused for a moment, surprised by the heaviness of the small boy leaning into him, the faith embodied in that fragile form. He gazed at Grace, who offered a soft nod, granting him the freedom to embrace the moment. Indeed, he did. From that moment forward, a shift occurred within him as well. He had always sensed the pull of the twins, the burgeoning bond he attempted to manage, but now it had intensified. He no longer observed them from a perspective of admiration, guilt, or wonder. He adored them, completely, intuitively, and without hesitation. As the evening settled in, Lucas and Grace found themselves on the couch, the gentle murmur of cartoons drifting softly from the adjacent room, a soothing backdrop to their quiet moment after tucking the kids in for the night. She sat with her legs tucked beneath her, while he lay beside her, near yet maintaining a respectful distance. Initially, their conversation meandered through mundane topics, work, errands, and a humorous remark Mia had made. But then Grace fell silent, her fingers gliding over the seam of a cushion. Today, she suddenly mentioned that they inquired about their father. Lucas propped himself up, focusing entirely on her. I've consistently shared the truth with them, she continued. He was not prepared. That it wasn't their responsibility. I always hoped they wouldn't sense abandonment, yet I also couldn't bring myself to be dishonest. And now, I find myself at a loss for words, as they have you in their grasp. Lucas paused before responding. He understood the significance of this moment, not only for her but for all that they were creating together. When he finally responded, his tone was steady, confident. There's no need to remove him to allow for my presence. I have no intention of altering their past. I simply want to contribute to their future. She gazed at him then, her eyes brimming with an intense and fragile emotion. Are you serious about that? If I didn't have a reason, I wouldn't be here. She lowered her gaze to her hands, and when she raised her eyes again, a tear was tracing a path down her cheek. You embody the role of a father in every meaningful aspect. Lucas grasped her hand firmly, his grip unwavering. Let's bring that to life. She blinked, a look of bewilderment crossing her face. Could you clarify what you mean? I desire to be a recognized part of their lives. I am ready to move forward, in accordance with the law, forever. Grace remained quiet. It wasn't uncertainty she experienced. It was an inundation of emotions. She had never envisioned a reality in which someone would seek to embrace her children, not from duty, but from genuine affection. She scanned his expression for any hint of uncertainty, but found none. Simply steadfast resolve. You're not joking, she whispered. I exist. I have never been more earnest. The stillness that ensued was imbued not with dread, but with a sense of reverence. Grace nodded slowly, her voice thick with emotion. Very well, she replied. Let's get started. In that brief moment of connection, everything transformed. Not with extravagant displays, but with the consistent rhythm of authenticity. They had become one intertwined existence. A bond was forming, creating a sense of family. Not due to their perfection, not due to any prior arrangements. Yet, they continually selected one another, time and time again, even in the face of difficulty. At this moment, they stood poised to bring their vision to life. The day of the hearing came softly, devoid of the clamor or drama that Lucas had become accustomed to in his corporate existence. There were no journalists, no official announcements, no corporate offices in skyscrapers. A humble family courtroom, with soft morning light streaming through tall windows, and the gentle sound of crayons gliding across paper as Mia and Leo busily colored at a small table tucked away in the corner. Grace sat next to Lucas, her hands enveloping his with a firm yet anxious grip, while her face maintained an air of calmness. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, her hair neatly pulled back and her gaze unwavering. Lucas had witnessed her courage in the past, but never in such a remarkable way. Today was not focused on her profession or justifying her actions. Today revolved around the act of placing faith in another with the most cherished fragments of her existence. The judge exhibited a gentle curiosity, posing a sequence of inquiries that Lucas addressed with unwavering confidence. He expressed his thoughts clearly regarding his intentions, the duration of his involvement, and the dynamics of his relationship with the twins and Grace. He kept it straightforward. He refrained from making promises he couldn't fulfill. He expressed his feelings honestly, sharing that he loved them, that they were his choice, and that he would reaffirm that choice each day. At a certain moment, the judge cast a look toward the children, who were now standing silently beside Grace. He inquired of Leo about the significance of Lucas in his life, and the young boy responded without a moment's pause. He claimed he is the one who remains. That response settled heavily in the middle of the space, gentle yet undeniably present. Grace's eyes brimmed with emotion, and Lucas sensed a profound change deep within his chest. It transcended titles and legal forms. It revolved around the creation they had nurtured, moment by moment, in cozy living rooms and during bedtime rituals, in instances of being fully present that had remained unnamed until this point. Upon the judge's decision to grant the request for legal guardianship, silence filled the room. Silence enveloped the room, thick and profound, until it was pierced by a solitary declaration. Mr. Bennett, as of today, you are legally recognized as the father of Mia and Leo. The words lingered in Lucas's thoughts long after they were uttered, not due to their transformative power, but because they validated a truth that had existed for quite some time. Later that afternoon, back at home, the five of them gathered on the living room floor, encircled by takeout boxes and crumpled napkins. The twins were still quite young to grasp the full extent of what had transpired, yet they sensed that something positive had taken place. They embraced him unexpectedly, as if intuitively recognizing that he belonged to them even more than he had before. Grace observed them with an expression Lucas would always remember, filled with a serene wonder, as if she were still attempting to convince herself that it wasn't merely a figment of her imagination. He extended his arm across the floor, gently grasping her hand. "We accomplished it," he murmured gently. "No," she replied with a smile. "You accomplished it." That evening, once the twins had drifted off to sleep and the house settled into a quiet hush, Grace retrieved an item from the drawer of her nightstand. The box was small and black, exuding a sense of simplicity and elegance. Lucas arched an eyebrow, yet she merely passed it to him. Within lay a silver band, inscribed on the interior with a single word, "Ours." "I was planning to hold off until next week," she remarked, "but tonight just seems perfect." Lucas gazed at her, his eyes filled with wonder. "Are you interested in?" "Indeed," she replied, her voice quivering just a bit. "I wish to wed the man who stood his ground. I desire to wed the one who remained." No grand speeches were made. Without a platform, without an audience. Only the two of them, enveloped in a moment that was uniquely theirs. He gently slid the ring onto his finger. He whispered, "I never imagined I would experience this." Grace moved in, her forehead gently touching his. "I didn't either. Yet we forged ahead and created it regardless. And they certainly did. Not quite right. Not in a hurry. However, completely. Through every truth confronted, every fear conquered, and every moment of choosing to remain when leaving seemed simpler, they had forged a family. It was intentional. However, it was a deliberate decision. In the hushed tranquility of that night, with two children peacefully slumbering down the hall and a new chapter unfolding, Lucas came to understand that all the things he once thought defined his strength paled in comparison to what he cherished in that moment. A dwelling, a household, A love that weathered the toughest trials and remained unwavering. A love that transcends the need for words, manifesting itself through daily presence and unwavering support. The reason the conclusion of this narrative strikes a chord with me is that it emphasizes not perfection, but the importance of being present. Lucas doesn't come in to resolve anything. He doesn't attempt to substitute the past or eliminate the suffering. He arrives and remains, day in and day out, selecting love not as a dramatic display but as a subtle, steadfast choice. That is what imbues it with strength. He transforms from a man who fled in fear to one who restores trust not through words, but through deeds. Grace's journey is equally poignant. She approaches love with a careful heart and is slow to forgive. She shields her children, safeguards her emotions, and allows herself to be vulnerable with Lucas once she realizes he genuinely grasps the essence of commitment. She allows herself to be loved not out of a belief in safety, but because she recognizes its authenticity, and that takes even more courage. This narrative revolves around the creation of something enduring from shattered fragments. It's a narrative of affection that acknowledges the challenges yet flourishes because of them. As they approach the conclusion, it's not a revisit to lost possibilities. Rather, it marks the inception of something greater, something truly deserved. That's the sort of conclusion that stays with you,